In 1971, as America celebrated the moon landing, a new kind of detective quietly rewrote the rules of TV. Columbo Season 1 didn't rely on gunfights or explosions. It showed that patience, sharp observation, and subtle intelligence could outsmart the cleverest criminals. With his rumpled raincoat and unassuming manner, Columbo became an icon of quiet brilliance, teaching viewers to notice what others overlooked. From cold-blooded writers to high-society killers, every episode hid clever details most audiences missed. Today, we're diving into 15 hidden moments that reveal just how meticulous and unforgettable Season 1 really was. Number 1. The typewriter murder that started everything. The very first official Columbo episode opens with a scene most viewers still remembered decades later. A famous mystery writer sits at his desk, typing calmly while his partner stands nearby. Then, without warning, without emotion, the writer pulls out a gun and shoots him dead. No music, no dramatic buildup, just cold, calculated murder. Steven Spielberg directed this scene when he was only 24 years old, and he made a choice that changed television forever. He didn't show violence as explosive or dramatic. He showed it as quiet and methodical. The killer types a fake to-do list on his partner's typewriter to make it look like he was still alive. But the killer made one mistake. He claimed his partner called him from the cabin to change their plans. Columbo realized the timing of that call was impossible. The killer couldn't have known his partner's plans unless he had already been there with him. The killer knew the victim was there because he drove him there to die. Number 2. When America first met the underestimated detective. Columbo walks into that crime scene wearing a wrinkled raincoat that looks like it came from a second-hand store. He fumbles with his notepad. He apologizes for bothering people. He asks simple questions that seem pointless. The killer, a confident and intelligent writer, barely looks at him. Most viewers watching in 1971 thought the same thing the murderer did. This guy doesn't belong here. Back then, detectives on television were smooth, professional, and commanding. They wore sharp suits and gave orders. Columbo looked like someone who got lost on the way to the dry cleaners. Do you remember the first time you realized someone you underestimated was actually brilliant? That's what this episode taught an entire generation of viewers. The writer treats Columbo like an annoyance, answering questions while clearly thinking about something else. He doesn't realize he's being studied with surgical precision. Every word, every pause, every nervous gesture is being cataloged. The beauty of this introduction is how slowly it builds. Spielberg didn't rush the reveal. He let audiences sit with their assumptions, just like the killer did. By the time Columbo leaves that first meeting, viewers still aren't sure what they just watched. That confusion is intentional. It's the hook that keeps people coming back. Number 3. The moment a typewriter became a murder weapon. Near the end of the episode, Columbo returns to the killer's office one more time. He's holding a piece of paper. The writer, still confident, still certain he's outsmarted everyone, barely glances at it. Then Columbo asks him to type something, just a quick sentence. Nothing important. The writer hesitates. For the first time, we see fear cross his face. He sits down at his typewriter and begins typing. Every key strike feels like a countdown. Columbo watches silently. When the writer finishes, Columbo holds up 2 pages side by side, the suicide note and the freshly typed sentence. One letter is misaligned on both pages. The same typewriter, the same killer. What makes this scene legendary is how simple the trap is. No forensic labs, no high-tech analysis, just observation. Columbo noticed something everyone else missed because he paid attention when no one else thought it mattered. The killer realizes his mistake too late. His entire elaborate plan, his carefully staged suicide, his perfect alibi, all destroyed by a single typewriter key that sat slightly higher than the others. Viewers in 1971 had never seen a detective win with patience instead of violence. This moment taught audiences that intelligence beats arrogance every single time. Number 4. The art gallery murder that felt like a chess game. The second major episode of Season 1 introduces a different kind of killer entirely. This one doesn't use guns or violence. He uses culture, sophistication, and wealth as his weapons. He runs an exclusive art gallery where only the richest collectors are allowed inside. He kills his business partner during a carefully planned evening, then stages the scene to look like a random robbery. The brilliance of this setup is how untouchable he seems. He's surrounded by beauty, intelligence, and power. He speaks multiple languages. He quotes famous philosophers. He moves through high society like royalty. When Columbo walks into that polished gallery, wearing his cheap, rumpled coat, the contrast is almost painful. The 1970s were a time when class divisions felt more visible than ever. People dressed differently, depending on where they worked and who they knew. Do you remember when entering certain buildings made you feel like you didn't belong? That's the tension this episode captures perfectly. The killer looks at Columbo the way someone looks at a stain on an expensive carpet. He doesn't see a threat. He sees an inconvenience. That arrogance becomes his fatal flaw. Columbo doesn't care about art or status or wealth. He only cares about details that don't add up. Number 5. In the episode, Suitable for Framing. Columbo displays his genius through a simple observation of light. He stands in the killer's home, looking at a wall where a painting is supposedly missing due to a robbery. But he notices the wall-mounted spotlight is still pointed perfectly at the empty space. He realizes that if a painting had actually been grabbed in a hurry, a thief wouldn't have stopped to adjust the lighting for an empty wall. The killer claimed a thief broke in and stole valuable artwork, but the lighting is the giveaway. There's a faint outline on the wall where a painting used to hang, but the spotlight is still positioned for a much larger piece. If a thief stole that painting during a chaotic robbery, why would he take time to move the spotlight? The scene is shot with almost no dialogue. We just watch Columbo stare at the wall, tilting his head, squinting with his one good eye. This moment is iconic because of the silence. No dramatic music, just a detective noticing something that doesn't fit. The killer was so focused on creating the perfect crime that he forgot to think about light and shadow. Art is about what you see and what you don't. Columbo understood that better than the art expert ever could. Number 6. The ending that made viewers stand up and cheer. The final confrontation in the art gallery episode happens in front of a crowd. The killer is hosting an elegant event, surrounded by wealthy patrons and influential critics. He's giving a speech about the importance of preserving beauty in a chaotic world. Then Columbo walks in. He doesn't interrupt the speech. He waits politely in the back until it's over. When the applause dies down, he approaches the killer and asks one simple question about the missing painting. The killer, still confident, answers smoothly. Then, Columbo reveals the truth in front of everyone. The painting was never stolen. It was moved before the murder to make the robbery look real. The killer overlooked a detail that didn't match his robbery story. That small inconsistency is what starts Columbo closing in. The crowd goes silent. The killer's face drains of color. There's no escape, no last-minute twist, no dramatic chase. Just public humiliation in the world he valued most. Back in the early 1970s, when Richard Nixon was president and trust in authority was crumbling, audiences loved seeing powerful people exposed by someone they underestimated. Do you remember feeling that kind of satisfaction? Watching a villain finally get caught? This ending became a template for every Columbo episode that followed. Justice delivered quietly, perfectly, and without mercy. Number 7. The General Who Gave Himself Away. Season 1's third episode introduces one of Columbo's most intimidating killers, a decorated Air Force general with national hero status. He murders a business associate to protect a secret arms deal, fully confident that his reputation will shield him from suspicion. Everyone treats him with respect, except Columbo. Columbo doesn't challenge the general's authority directly. Instead, he watches how the man behaves under pressure. The general recalls the shooting with extraordinary clarity. Angles, distances, timing details most civilians wouldn't register in a moment of shock. His discipline never slips. His composure never breaks. And that's the problem. A real accident leaves confusion, panic, contradictions. But the general's account is too precise, too controlled, like a military report instead of a human memory. Columbo realizes the general isn't reacting like a witness. He's reacting like someone trained to stay calm during combat. The very discipline that made him powerful also made him suspicious. His training didn't protect him. It exposed him. Number 8. The cigar box trap that blew up an alibi. In 1972, Roddy McDowell played Roger Stanford, a spoiled, brilliant chemist who decided to retire his uncle with a bang. He didn't use a remote-triggered car bomb that's too high-tech for 1971. Instead, he went old school. He rigged a cigar box with a chemical bomb that would explode only after the box was opened and a specific number of cigars were removed. It was the ultimate delayed fuse. Roger was miles away, establishing a perfect alibi, when the car carrying his uncle and a company driver turned into a fireball on a mountain road. To the world, it looked like a tragic accident. But Columbo noticed the short fuse in Roger's personality. The nostalgic hook. Remember the tension of the final scene? It wasn't a car ride. It was a gondola lift dangling high above the mountains. Columbo traps Roger in that cable car and pulls out a brand new identical cigar box he bought at a shop. He starts fumbling with it, pretending he's going to reenact the explosion to see how it works. He acts like he's about to trigger the chemical fuse right there in the cramped car. Roger, the man who thought he was a genius, absolutely loses his cool. He screams, dives for the box, and accidentally reveals he knows exactly how the bomb was built. That look of pure, unadulterated terror on McDowell's face as he realizes he's trapped 1,000 feet in the air? That was the moment an entire generation realized. You can't outrun a man who's willing to play chicken with a bomb just to get a confession. Number 9. The movie that defined Columbo's psychological edge. Before Columbo became a weekly series, the pilot movie, Ransom for a Dead Man, introduced one of the smartest plots of the era. A brilliant lawyer murders her husband and stages an elaborate fake kidnapping. She accounts for every police procedure, but she makes one fatal mistake. She's too perfect. Columbo enters the case expecting a kidnapping, but almost immediately, something feels wrong. It wasn't the evidence, it was her behavior. The suspect knows exactly when to panic, when to cry, and when to sound desperate. She is too exact. Columbo watches how she reacts instead of what she says. Her fear appears on cue, and when ransom calls come in, her emotions arrive a fraction of a second late, like an actor waiting for direction. That tiny delay tells Columbo everything. The plan accounted for police procedures, but not human instinct. The crime almost worked perfectly. Almost. Number 10. When Columbo finally stopped playing nice. The confrontation at the end of the fake kidnapping episode is one of the most satisfying moments in Season 1. Columbo invites the wife to the police station under the pretense of reviewing evidence. The widow arrives confident, still believing her plan is airtight. Columbo lays out every inconsistency to her. He doesn't shout. He simply walks through the facts. He let her think she was safe. He let her get comfortable. Then he dismantled the entire lie in one conversation. People watching in the early 1970s, during an era of rising skepticism, were exhausted by loud arguments and aggressive confrontation. Do you remember when calm, quiet intelligence felt more powerful than shouting? That's what this episode delivered. She realizes she lost not because Columbo was smarter, but because Columbo was more patient. He played the long game while the killer thought he'd already won. Number 11. The season that quietly explained Columbo's method. Season 1 never gives Columbo a dramatic monologue explaining how he solves crimes. Instead, it teaches you his method quietly, episode by episode. While other detectives search for evidence, Columbo pays attention to gaps, things that should exist, but don't. A phone call that was never made, a routine that suddenly changed, a reaction that doesn't match the situation. Across Season 1, Columbo repeatedly circles back to what's missing, not what's visible. The killers create airtight stories, but real life isn't airtight. It's messy, inconsistent, humans. When everything fits too perfectly, Columbo knows someone designed it that way. Season 1 trains the audience to think the same way, by teaching you to notice absences instead of clues. Once you realize that, every strange question Columbo asks suddenly makes sense. Number 12. The case where routine became the evidence. One of Season 1's smartest episodes involves a murderer who relies on a flawless alibi and spotless execution. There's no clear physical evidence tying him to the crime, no witnesses, no obvious mistakes. On paper, the case should go nowhere. So Columbo does something unexpected. He studies the victim's daily life, not motives, not weapons, habits. When the victim left for work, who saw him every morning, what never changed in his routine. That's where the killer slips. His timeline requires the victim to have done something completely out of character on the day of his death, something small, something no one else would notice. But Columbo notices because he understands people are creatures of habit. In the early 1970s, routine was predictable, and Columbo used that predictability as evidence when nothing else existed. Number 13. The gloved reveal that framed the framer. You remembered the art gallery, but the real gotcha was even more brilliant than a simple conversation. The killer, Dale Kingston, played by the wonderfully smug Ross Martin, didn't just kill for money, he killed for masterpieces. He murdered his uncle, stole 2 priceless Degas pastels, and then tried to frame his own aunt by planting the paintings in her house. Dale thought he was untouchable. He even laughed when the police found the paintings, telling Columbo, "Of course my fingerprints are on them. I'm an art critic. I've handled those paintings for years." He thought he had a built-in excuse for every piece of physical evidence. This is arguably the most famous ending in the show's history. When the paintings are found, the killer, Dale, sees Columbo's fingerprints on them. He sneers, accusing the lieutenant of touching them just now at the crime scene to frame him. He thinks he's caught Columbo breaking the law. Then comes the magic. Without saying a word, Columbo reaches into his pockets and pulls out 2 white surgical gloves. He explains he has been wearing them since the moment he arrived at the house. He never touched those paintings with his bare hands at the crime scene. The only way Columbo's prints could be on those paintings is if he touched them days ago, while they were still hidden in Dale's apartment. By catching Columbo touching them, Dale actually proved he had seen the paintings before the police ever found them. Number 14. Why Columbo felt different from every other detective. Late in Season 1, viewers finally understand why Columbo works. He disarms suspects not with authority, but with humility. He apologizes. He rambles. He talks about his wife. He seems harmless. Suspects relax. They stop performing, and that's when they reveal themselves. Columbo isn't pretending to be stupid. He's creating space. Space for people to underestimate him. Space for arrogance to surface. In the early 1970s, during a time when trust in institutions was collapsing, audiences connected with a detective who didn't dominate suspects. He listened, and by listening, he won. Number 15. Why Season 1 changed television forever. By the end of Season 1, Columbo had accomplished something no other detective show had done before. It made the audience smarter. Traditional crime shows kept viewers in the dark until the final reveal. Columbo showed you the murder in the first 5 minutes. You knew who did it. You knew how they did it. You knew why. The mystery wasn't who done it. The mystery was, how will Columbo prove it? That structural choice revolutionized television storytelling. Suddenly, viewers weren't just watching a detective solve crimes. They were watching a battle of intellect between 2 people who both knew the truth. The tension came from waiting to see which tiny detail would finally break the killer's confidence. Season 1 also proved that television could be slow, patient, and intelligent without losing audiences. Most shows relied on action and violence to keep people watching. Columbo relied on dialogue, observation, and psychological warfare. Episodes were 90 minutes long, almost twice the length of typical shows. They took their time building tension. They trusted viewers to stay engaged without explosions or chase scenes. Peter Falk's performance turned a character who could have been a gimmick into someone people genuinely cared about. That rumpled raincoat became iconic, not because of marketing, but because it represented something deeper. The idea that intelligence and decency could defeat arrogance and cruelty. Season 1 taught an entire generation that the smartest person in the room isn't always the loudest. Thanks for watching. Columbo Season 1 isn't just a classic 1970s mystery. It's a masterclass in storytelling, character work, and clever detective craft that still influences crime dramas today. You just saw 15 hidden details that make these episodes more brilliant than most viewers realize. From subtle clues to psychological plays that define Columbo's legacy. If you loved uncovering secrets behind the "How Catch 'em" format and the iconic "Just One More Thing" moments, hit like and subscribe for more deep dives into classic TV mysteries. Comment below your favorite Columbo twist or hidden detail we missed. For more breakdowns of detective shows, behind-the-scenes trivia, and nostalgic TV analysis, stick around when you're in the right place.